Welcome to LiberalViewer Wednesday Live. This is my weekly Q&A show where I answer questions from my viewers, both questions that people post for me during the week on my YouTube channel, also at facebook.com/liberalviewer and twitter.com/liberalviewer. And then I also will take live questions from my live viewers. I hope you're all tuning in and can see and hear me here. Oh, I see. I do have some people joining me. That's good. As you start joining me, before I get to the first question that was asked during the week, I want to let everyone know that I'll be doing LiberalViewer Wednesday Live next week a little bit late, either half an hour or an hour late. So it won't be 4:30 p.m. Pacific as usual. It'll either be 5 or 5:30 p.m. It's actually just a dentist appointment I made 6 months ago that I have to work around. So I'll just be a little late for LiberalViewer Wednesday Live next week. For this week, I'm going to now start with some of the questions that people asked me during the week. First question came from Terry Alfer. Has had a question almost every week. It says, question for Wednesday. I've noticed there has been quite some discussion about the Citizens United case from the left in the last few weeks, but it seems to support and or indicate that corporations aren't people, and in some of them that Citizens United made the money in politics problem worse. Will this misunderstanding come back to haunt liberals and progressives? Here are the links, starting with this article, How to Strip Corporations of Constitutional Rights, that actually starts with this line, corporations aren't people. If they were, Yahoo's recent acquisition of Tumblr would be a violation of the Constitution, because it would be slavery or whatever, I guess, because you can't buy a person. But then it goes on to talk about corporate personhood as like a big problem, which I've made a bunch of videos about this, and I think corporate personhood is kind of a red herring. I don't think the problem, there's definitely a problem of too much money in politics, but the reason for that problem isn't corporate personhood. I know that there's a committed core of people who are waiting for me to do this campaign finance video, or a video about why I oppose a constitutional amendment to fix the problem of money in politics. And so I've been working a little more on that. If you look right below where I'm talking in the video description, if you click on more, you'll see there's an update on my video tentatively titled Fixing Money's Corruption of Politics Requires Constitutional Amendment, ? And I put 5 links in there that I'm currently looking at to work on that video. There are 2 videos. One's a Cenk Uygur video from the Root Strikers conference. One is a Lawrence Lessig video. He did something like it at Root Strikers, but this is actually from a TED Talk. And then a Huffington Post article that Lawrence Lessig wrote, actually saying he's in favor of a constitutional amendment too, and the fact that the ACLU opposes it makes him think maybe he shouldn't be a member of the ACLU. And then I have ACLU of Rhode Island legislative update where they talk about why they opposed the Constitutional Convention bill in Rhode Island. And then there's also a fine law page about the requirements of a constitutional convention, and I'm going to look at some sources from there. And I'm not guaranteeing that that's going to be my next video, but I have been working on it, and there's a significant chance that will be my next video. I'll let you know. So that is my answer to I guess that didn't completely answer Terry's question about the corporate personhood issue. I think that people on the left think that the problems with money in politics started with Citizens United and stems from corporate personhood, and both those things are wrong. The problem with money in politics is, it probably goes back 1,000 years or whatever, but it certainly goes throughout the history of the United States, and corporate personhood is not the source of that problem, and Citizens United is not the source of that problem. The problem is that rich people have more power than poor people, and people with money have more influence than people without money. And there is more of a problem than that. That's kind of a glib way of looking at it. And I do like what Lawrence Lessig's analogy about how there are basically two electoral processes. He talks about Lesterland, where there's an election for from the general population after there's an election among people named Lester. And people named Lester are like 0.1% of the population or something like that. And you can't say that people named Lester control the process, because there is that second election where the general electorate has to approve the candidates. But because people named Lester have so much extra power, you'll see that there is a sort of subtle way that all policies lean towards what people named Lester want. And this is an analogy to the way that our system works, where the people with money there's like a money primary, basically, and you don't have to win the money primary, but you have to do very well in it to get to the general election. But of course, that doesn't mean that the general election doesn't matter. It does matter. You have to go through both processes to gain political power in the United States. And anyway, I think I am going to make a video about that, and it may be the next video. And if you want to know some of what I'm going to talk about, you can look at the links in the video description down below. So getting on to the second question that Leroy Johnson asked me like 6 or 7 hours ago. For Wednesday, I know you already are like going to discuss the Supreme Court's DNA ruling, but here is a reminder just in case you forgot. Do you foresee all states enacting DNA collection laws in light of this ruling, and is there a possibility of it being overturned by a future court? And I drink a little water there before I... Okay, so I'm glad someone asked about that, because I wasn't necessarily going to talk about the Supreme Court's DNA ruling. For those who don't know, in a 5-4 decision this week, the Supreme Court ruled that in the state of Maryland, they can swab people's cheeks and collect their DNA when they're just arrested. It's for serious crimes in Maryland's case, but you don't have to be convicted, and there doesn't have to be a warrant from a judge with particularized suspicion. It's just they can swab the cheeks, and then they keep this database. And there are some strictures on when they use the database. And that's one of the things I wanted to point out in answer to the question from Leroy Johnson here. If you go onto my Facebook page, facebook.com/LiberalViewer, like the second to last thing I posted was a link to an ACLU of Northern California. First, a picture that says DNA does not equal fingerprints. And then if you click on that, you can find a blog entry by Michael Risher, who's a staff attorney at the ACLU of Northern California. And at the end of that, there's an important point that he makes. I'm putting up on the screen here. One thing that's important to remember is that Maryland's law is very different from the laws of other states. As the court repeatedly emphasized, it only allows the police to seize DNA from people who have been arrested and charged with very serious crimes, and the government can only test the DNA samples of those people who have actually been charged with the crime, and only after a judge has found that there is probable cause to think the person has actually committed a crime. Other states' laws, in contrast, allow the police to take DNA from people merely arrested for much less serious crimes. In California, simple drug possession, joyriding, or intentionally bouncing a check are enough. Federal government can take your DNA if you get arrested for letting your dog off leash on federal land. And these laws also allow the government to analyze that DNA sample even if you are never charged with a crime, or if a judge decides that there's no reason to think you've ever committed a crime in the first place. And so the ACLU of Northern California has its own lawsuit, Haskell versus Harris, that challenges the California's much broader law. And we're hoping that the courts will recognize that despite today's unfortunate decision, these much broader laws violate our fundamental rights to privacy and the Fourth Amendment's command that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. A single police officer's decision to arrest a person for a minor offense should not justify this intrusion into genetic privacy. So the answer to the question is, I want to make sure that everyone understands that this Supreme Court decision was about a specific Maryland law that actually was a pretty strict law when it comes to DNA. It only applied to serious crimes, and they'd collect it on arrest, but then they wouldn't test it until the judge found that there was probable cause for arrest. And, that's bad, because it is only probable cause to arrest. It's not for conviction. and it's not probable cause to search. But it doesn't mean that every DNA collection law around the country is now constitutional. A lot of the DNA collection laws around the country, like the one we have here in California, is a lot broader, and those are still going to be challenged. The ACLU is challenging California's law right now because it lets people, it lets the police collect your DNA for very minor offenses, and the judge doesn't come into it, and same with the federal law. So that is my answer to that question. I've got to add in the other 3 preloaded questions I have, which is all the clicking you hear. I apologize for that, but I can only load 3 media files at a time. So my next question here, and I'll take a little drink before I read it, and it comes from Chris Hensler. Says, you've been making videos for a while now. Do you ever feel overwhelmed or helpless at the prospect of pointing out the hypocrisy and the corruption of the government and media? No, just because that was never really my expectation of what I was going to achieve with my YouTube channel. I've actually, when I started my YouTube channel, I was really trying to upload news clips that interested me because I'd run out of places to save them on my hard drive, basically, and then I realized that to upload them to YouTube, I had to add commentary for fair use purposes, and then I started to gain an audience based on the commentary I was adding to these news clips, and so all of the I've gotten 45 million video views at this point, and I'm creeping up on 100,000 subscribers, and that's a lot more than I ever expected from the videos I was making. And even when I first started, I never expected to get that much. And really, I kind of figure I'm just doing a very small part in correcting misinformation. There's a lot out there, and that's for someone who is looking for subjects to make videos about. The fact that there's so much out there, that means I'm never going to run out of topics to make videos about. I mean, there are occasionally weeks where I have problems finding a topic, but most weeks I have 3 or 4 ideas, and I'm just trying to see what I have time to make. So it's actually kind of keeps me going, the fact that there's so much to do, and I figure I'm just doing my small part, and maybe everyone should do their part and a little more than their part to make up for the people who aren't doing their part. And so I'm just doing my part to fight for truth out there on the internet, I guess. But no, I don't get overwhelmed by it, because it was never my expectation to conquer the misinformation from government in the media all by myself. So I'm just doing my small part, I guess, and hopefully inspiring a few more people to try to do their small part. And if we all work together, then we can do much bigger things, I guess. So the next question I have here to answer is from EastAns88. Do you believe all the attention to the so-called Obama scandals are just partisan politics, or are they justified? Well, I think I've answered this question kind of several times over the last couple weeks as I've been discussing these scandals. Excuse me, let me take a little drink here. Marco Rubio. And I'd say, I've changed my mind a little bit as to which is the most consequential scandal. I don't think Benghazi is ever really even should have qualified as being a scandal. Not that there wasn't mistakes made by the State Department, but there was that whole review board thing. Was that IRB, AIRB, or I can't remember the letters, but there's this review board set up in the law that sent out this report, and it found problems in security throughout the State Department and communications throughout the State Department, but it didn't show some sort of political scandal, I didn't think, and I still don't. And so it's really between the IRS and the the AP / Jeff Rosen criminalizing journalism scandal. And on the IRS scandal, I think there's wrongdoing there. I just don't see it tied to the White House as of yet. And I think it may be more to do with stupidity than with malice. I think I said that pretty much from the beginning, that people were looking for a way to scrutinize these 501c4s because they were political when they were only supposed to be primarily social welfare organizations, but there was a big influx of money into them after the Citizens United case. And so they were trying to scrutinize that, and they did it in a stupid way that ended up disproportionately or maybe even exclusively, I'm not sure, affecting conservative organizations. And I don't know if that, but so far it wasn't really politically motivated that anyone's been able to prove, and there's no connection to the White House. And that leaves the AP and Jeff Rosen Fox News scandal, where the Justice Department has gone after journalists for receiving information for leaks from leakers, government leakers. And I think there is kind of a scandal there, but the scandal is really about the growing amount of government secrecy, and this is sort of a continuum of something that started in the Bush administration. Not that that absolves Obama and Holder from what they've been doing. And there's also a lot of hypocrisy on the right. You can even see my most recent produced and edited video, which is called Fox News Espionage Act Hypocrisy on WikiLeaks versus Jeff Rosen. If you haven't watched that, you should definitely go and watch that. And that talks about how that scandal gives some more information about that scandal and some of the details of why I do think that even what was done to Jeff Rosen at Fox News was I'm calling him Jeff Rosen. His name's James Rosen. Jeff Rosen is a guy who writes for the New Republic. Sorry about that. James Rosen on Fox News. Even though I'm no big fan of Fox News or James Rosen, I do have problems with naming him as a violator of the Espionage Act for receiving classified information under. I think the First Amendment protects journalists and WikiLeaks and anyone who's receiving information to publish in the public. Third-party publishers are protected under the Espionage Act by the First Amendment, according to my reading of the First Amendment and First Amendment cases, which kind of is a good segue into the last question I have from before I started the broadcast. And that's from Stephen Sovinsky, who in a previous comment said he was studying for the bar in Virginia, I think. And he says, do you on occasion act as an attorney today, or have you completely left that behind? And what do you do to keep up with the current legal issues you are interested in and talk about in your videos? Well, I haven't really acted as a paid attorney in quite a long time. I have acted as an attorney in volunteer ways every now and then. But the main things I do where I use my legal knowledge is my volunteer work with the ACLU, which sometimes requires me to act as a lawyer or to give a legal opinion or to speak as a lawyer. And my legal knowledge about constitutional law helps there. Because I'm on the board of my local ACLU affiliate, the ACLU of Northern California, I read the minutes or the agenda from the legal committee, and I read the reasons that the ACLU is filing all of its cases. And I read background. I read long legal memos about that, and I kind of keep informed on some issues that way. And in issues that I get involved in as an activist, I read the background legal information and understand that. And also for my videos, I do a lot of legal research. A lot of my videos are on legal issues. Even that one I was just talking about on the Espionage Act, I read all those cases. I read I read at least the majority opinion in that DNA case from the Supreme Court, and I read parts of Scalia's dissent. So I read Supreme Court cases, and I also subscribe to a couple listservs. There's this constitutional law professor listserv I've subscribed to for many years, and they discuss a lot of current events and give they're both conservative and liberal law professors on that list. There's one on constitutional law and one on religion law that I subscribe to, and one on gun regulations and Second Amendment law. So those are three listservs that I subscribe to, and I don't really contribute, but I lurk and I read on the issues I'm interested in, and that helps me. There's some very eminent legal scholars who contribute to that constitutional law listserv. So I guess that pretty much covers, that answers that question, and that covers the questions that people asked me during the week and in the hour or two before I started this broadcast. Looks like I'm like over 50 viewers at the moment. I'm glad to see that. You know, I've been noticing that my live viewership has gone up from like 30 to 50 over the last several weeks, and then the people who watched the recorded show for this Wednesday one is a couple thousand, and for the one where I actually do more work and come up with clips for people to watch on Sunday, that's going up to like 5,000. So, I mean, that's, even though it's not as much as my edited and produced videos, I'm not so important that I can't spend my time talking to thousands of people on a weekly basis about issues that are important to me, and I hope important to all of you. So I'm glad to see that, and I'm going to try to take some live questions here. Let me see. I've got about 13 comments since I started here. Pulse Neutrino asked, do you think cannabis will be legal in UK after January 2014 when US sell it legally in shops? You know, I have gotten really worried in a couple of my past live events about straying outside my field of expertise, talking about the domestic politics of European countries. I don't know anything about the legalization of marijuana in the UK. I know something about the Amsterdam situation where it was legal, of course, in the coffee shops, and then they were talking about getting rid of the legality for foreigners because it was bringing in a criminal element. But as to the Great Britain, I don't know anything about the legalization effort there. I'm glad that there are two states in the United States, Washington and Colorado, where it's been legalized. And here in California, I have it on good authority that there will be another attempt at a statewide proposition in 2016. And I'm hopeful, even though Proposition 19 here in California I believe, was it 2010 or 2012? I think it was 2012, but I'll have to, whatever. But I think there's a good chance it will be successful now. So that is a non-answer to that question. Sebastian Nito asked me, why do we only care the NDA and how it applies to Americans? Shouldn't we be upset that we detain anyone without trial indefinitely? Also, what do you think about the lawsuit against the Obama administration by Chris Hedges? Well, the second question, unfortunately, I don't know anything about the Chris Hedges lawsuit, although I will, as soon as I get off the air, I will look into that. But I do think the NDAA and the drone program, it is sometimes disturbing that people only care about American citizens and how those programs apply to American citizens. I would point out if you go through and you read the Bill of Rights, the word citizen never appears in the Bill of Rights. The word person and people appear, and that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That doesn't say citizen, that says person. And if you look at the 14th Amendment, where they apply that to the states, they use the word citizen in the 14th Amendment and other places, so if they wanted to use the word citizen, they could use the word citizen, and they didn't. So the constitutional rights that limit the powers of the U.S. government apply to U.S. citizens and to non-U.S. citizens equally. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So I am disturbed when people are only concerned about indefinite detention of U.S. citizens. I mean, one reason there's a difference is the Supreme Court decided way back in the 19th century that deportation is not a punishment, and so you don't have all the due process rights of a criminal defendant if you're being deported, and it's just a civil matter. It's not a crime, and you have lower due process rights. And so if you're not a U.S. citizen and you're in the process of being deported, you have less rights than a criminal defendant, whether that criminal defendant is a U.S. citizen or a non-U.S. citizen. So at least in that way, there is a little bit of a difference, but I definitely take that point. Let me see. Imagine Peace 63 says, "What are your thoughts on Keystone?" I'm a definite. I accept the scientific evidence on man-made climate change, and I think we have to do something about the amount of carbon we're putting into the atmosphere. And this kind of, what are they called, tar sands, or the oil or the stuff that's coming through the Keystone pipeline is very high in carbon. Although I don't know if not building the pipeline is going to stop that oil from being processed and all that carbon going into the atmosphere anyway, unfortunately. And then, of course, there's the possible environmental impact of the pipeline breaking in environmentally sensitive areas, or even not environmentally sensitive areas. So I'm not really in favor of the Keystone pipeline, because I don't think we should be putting that much effort into fossil fuels in this day and age. So that's my thought. Can you tell Imagine Pieces, can you tell us how the Monsanto Protection Act was passed? Well, wasn't that something that was like slipped in there at the last minute in the middle of the night to help corporations? Actually, I haven't read all the details of that, so I don't feel like I should really talk about that extensively, but I believe there was some corporate influence involved in the passage of the Monsanto Protection Act. But I think the Monsanto Protection Act lets genetically modified foods get out of like state court orders, and it gives like a federal uniformity that nullifies state rules or state edicts on it. I don't know. I'm actually not that conversant on the Monsanto Protection Act, so sorry. Andrew Blumenfeld, this is the first time you mentioned Marco Rubio while drinking water in the past couple of so okay, thank you. I'll make sure to mention that more often. I notice that's gotten they seem to mention that on the Daily Show and the Colbert Report a lot, so you got to keep that going to 2016. John Klein asked, do you think the Democratic Party will make good on their recent threat to change the filibuster rules? I'm ambivalent about changing the filibuster rules. When it came to stopping Bush judges, who I thought were going to further curtail the rights of the minority, I thought that was the best time for the minority to assert itself in the Senate to protect minority rights. And so it's hard for me to forget my position under the Bush administration about filibustering bad judges. Although the judges that the Republicans are filibustering aren't really to protect minority rights, they're really to protect corporate rights, and especially in the D.C. circuit. I don't know. I think that the threat of the change to the filibuster rules may be used to come up with a deal on more Obama judges being confirmed by the Senate. That would be my guess as to where it will all turn out. But I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I definitely am frustrated by the way the Republicans have basically made 60 votes the requirement of almost every piece of legislation in the Senate, and that's unprecedented. But on the other hand, as someone who believes in the rights of the minority against the majority for a lot of issues, I'm kind of fond of the way that the minority can stop the tyranny of the majority from taking hold in the Senate on those issues I care about. So let me see another question here. Exploratory research says, do you think that your labeling of newscasters as supposedly straight is an ad hominem attack unless they are talking on the issue of sexuality? No. I've talked about this on several occasions, I think, at least in the comment section. I say supposedly straight news reporters. I'm talking about what time of day or what kind of program that they're on Fox News. Rupert Murdoch or Roger Ailes, the head of news at Fox News, once said in an interview that there are only certain hours of the day when Fox News is broadcasting straight news, and then in other times they're actually more opinion shows like Hannity and O'Reilly and I can't remember which hours. It was a very kind of checkerboard schedule. I mean, the whole argument is kind of ridiculous because it's Fox. The word news is on the screen in Fox News all the time, and it's not like in the newspaper where there's one section that's the editorial or the opinion section, and you can see it's different from the other sections, which was what Roger Ailes, his specific analogy, he talked about the opinion section in the newspaper. So anyway, when I talk about supposedly straight news anchor, I'm saying that they are anchoring a show that's supposedly straight news, and it has nothing to do with their sexuality. Perhaps you are being facetious in your question, or maybe I don't know, people don't understand that a lot, so I thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain that. Sean FS, have you ever read An Atheist in the Foxhole by Joe Muto? No, the answer to that question is no, so I can't recommend it. Origin Linear asks, if you volunteer as a lawyer, how do you make a living? Well, the only thing I do at the moment that makes money is my YouTube videos, which actually used to make more money than they do now. Over the last couple of years, I think I've lost about 2/3 of the income that I used to have at the height of my YouTube channel. But I spend about 10 or 20 hours a week on my YouTube channel, about 10 or 20 hours a week volunteering for the ACLU, and about 10 or 20 hours a week on my duties as a stay-at-home dad. And as I've mentioned in other videos at other times, my wife is an OBGYN, and so she is the primary breadwinner in the family. If you look back at my last live event, LiberalViewer Sunday Live from last Sunday, I show Megyn Kelly on Fox News talking about the primary breadwinner controversy, where all these men on Fox Business News were saying that it was the breakdown of society, that 40% of primary breadwinners and families are now women. My family, the primary breadwinner is a woman, so maybe that answers your question there. It looks like I'm already over 30 minutes here, so I just want to remind everyone that next week, LiberalViewer Wednesday Live will be a little delayed. It won't be at the regular 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. It will either be half an hour or an hour delayed. I will post it a couple hours before, but it will be at either 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. Pacific next week. Hopefully before next Sunday I will have another produced video up. It may be this one on whether fixing the corrupting influence of money on politics requires a constitutional amendment, and one where, whether I do that or not, next Sunday will be another episode of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. So I think I got a lot of good questions this week, both during the week and live questions. So thank you for joining me and for adding in your thoughts, because without for this live show, particularly without your thoughts and input, it's there isn't really a show. So thank you, and I hope the rest of your week is pleasant, and I'll see you on the weekend.